Do you ever find yourself feeling resentful or even worse, bitter? I want to talk about that today, both as how it relates to where you are and where you live. Let's talk about it. I have several friends right now who are feeling a little resentful about their situation and honestly about the place they live. And I thought this would be a good time to talk about this and give some thoughts on what I think you can counter that, how you can be a little proactive to not feel that way, and why it might not be serving you in the long run. I'm Jackie Wolven, and I want you to love where you are. And on Sundays, I paint from my studio. Join me. First start, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. When we first moved to San Francisco from Southern California, we had moved there because I wanted to live in a place that was really the most liberal place on the planet that I could think of. I wanted to live in a place where you could express yourself freely and that people were cared for and that they were trying really progressive things. And so we moved there, and I was quite idealistic. I thought it was the place to be for that, for the progressive movement. And after living there for some time, the complexities of city living, I realized one, my expectation might have been too high or unrealistic, and two, it's a lot to put those values onto a place that is struggling with lots of different things. And so, although I left somewhat disappointed, I would guess, that it didn't meet my expectation, it set me up for the next stage of my life to have a little better feeling about my own needs and wants and what the community could offer. So I say all that to say, I get it. I get that we move to a place thinking it's going to be the greatest place on earth, and then it doesn't end up being the greatest place on earth. It ends up being a place that can be great. But maybe it's not supposed to meet all our needs. Maybe it's not supposed to be perfect. Maybe it never could be perfect. And I just want to talk about that. I want to talk about both in relationship to place and the places in our lives, things like relationships and work and just community in general. So that's my own first, like my first step into that is that I know this. I know that feeling. So if you are feeling resentful or bitter about a choice you made and then that choice isn't working out, I gotcha. I've been there. It's real. That feeling is valid, but it also probably doesn't serve you. And so let's talk about how you can walk yourself back out of that and how you can set yourself up for better success, I think. First, I want to think about setting expectations. I think our expectations are often really high when it comes to both the place we live, maybe where we work, our relationships. We set these expectations and we have this sort of idealized version of what we think might happen. And the reality is that probably isn't fair to the place, the job, or the relationship. We aren't seeing it how it really is, we're seeing it how we want it to be. And it probably won't meet those expectations if they're really high. There's a lot of factors in building a place or a job or a relationship, and resetting our expectations to what's actually happening as opposed to what we want to happen might set us up for being happier. I know that what I've learned is there is no perfect place. There is no perfect job. There is no perfect relationship. And so setting the expectation, yeah, I don't want to settle. There's a difference, right? There's settling. Well, yeah, I guess I just have to live with it. And there's, am I asking it to be too much? You have to figure that out for yourself, and it needs to be fair. I want the place that I live and the place I work and the relationships I have to win, to work. So setting them up for consistent failure will be a disappointment really only to me. And so resetting what those expectations might be is helpful. It's really helpful. Now, could I have done that while I was living in San Francisco? Probably not. I'm going to tell you the truth is that it was only in the next move that I was able to reset those expectations. It's hard to do it when you're in it, right? You would have to do some soul searching and to really think about how to reset those expectations so that they were more achievable. And I'm not to say that it cannot be done. I just know that fresh starts make that easier. So it's something to think about. If you aren't going to move, or you're not going to change your job, or you're not going to change your relationship, how can you create a fresh start moment even though it's nothing has changed? You're still in all the same places. And I think one of the ways I might do that is like maybe around my birthday, let that be the fresh start. Okay, I'm going to reset my expectations for this place or this job or this relationship, or maybe the beginning of the year, or maybe even at the beginning of the next month. You might say, okay, I want to reset this. I want to make this a little different for myself. So how could I learn to love what I have? How could I find the good parts of it? How can I help it achieve a thing that I would like it to achieve? Not somebody else doing something. How can I do that? That might help. Those are ways that that might work. I think one of the things that's important too is to acknowledge your resentment. Acknowledge that you're feeling resentful. Feel it, write it out, paint it, whatever it takes. Don't avoid it. Don't pretend it's not happening. It's better to get granular on the idea that, yeah, I am feeling resentful. I really wanted it to be like this, and it's not like that. It's okay to have those feelings. It's pretty normal to have those feelings. And I think that if we could just talk about it, think about it a little bit, that might help shift us out of it too. By avoiding it or pretending it's not happening probably isn't the answer. And so for that, I would say, like I said, maybe some writing, maybe talk to a licensed therapist about your resentment, because the worst thing you can do is become bitter. So I see resentment as the road to bitterness. And I have told my girlfriends, if I ever become a bitter old lady, just stop me, because we know those people who are bitter and they are unhappy about everything around them, and no one wants to be around them, and they're not happy themselves. And so I see the trajectory of resentment to bitterness, and I don't want to go down that road. So talking about it, how it makes me feel, helps. It helps. So one of the things, and I know I'm a proponent for meditation and mindfulness, and that might not be your thing, but it does help in this instance. When I can be mindful of my thoughts and how I'm feeling and my emotions, I can respond in a different way that can shift feeling resentful. And so that practice is a ripple effect. It's something you do every day, and it affects how you approach your place or your work or your relationships. It affects how you're able to respond when things aren't going well, and it can shift resentment because you start to have a little bit of compassion for yourself and your hurt feelings, because that's what resentment is, right? It's disappointment, it's hurt feelings. That's what it is. And it can often be sort of an all or nothing thinking, like, oh, it's all terrible because I feel this way. And meditation or mindfulness can help you realize that, oh, well, I have lots of emotions and thoughts and thinking, and it isn't all just one thing. So it's a nice practice to help shift you out of it. It's not a quick fix, though. There's no quick fix to that, but it is helpful. Another thing is to practice a little forgiveness. Forgiveness for yourself for setting that expectation so high, forgiveness for the place for not meeting that expectation, for the job or for the relationship. I read something recently about how we have expectations that in a love relationship that person is supposed to fulfill all your needs. They're supposed to be your motivator. They're supposed to be your scheduler, keep you happy, all the things. And that's really not realistic. One person can't be your full everything. It takes a team of people. And so I think that if you can have a little forgiveness for yourself for having that expectation of another person or your job or workplace or the place that you live, that can be really helpful. And so forgiveness of yourself and for them. um, a job isn't supposed to be all everything. It's a part of your life. Your work is a big part of your life, but it isn't your whole life. So having a little expectation of it's resetting of expectation and feeling like, oh, I can forgive this place that I work for not fulfilling all my needs. They're not meant to. They're there to fulfill their needs when it comes to work, by the way, and hopefully yours align. But you can feel a feeling of, oh, I can forgive this, that it's not perfect. I think for most things, if we could forgive people and places and work settings and relationships for not being what we think they should be, we will feel better. And forgive ourselves for having those high expectations that were not able to be met. We made them not knowing. We made them before we experienced it. We had an ideal in our head and then it didn't work out. That's okay. It's okay that it didn't. And you can forgive yourself as well. The last thing is to set new expectations. So, what is real? So, if you're not going to move, pack up and move, or you're not going to change jobs right away, or you're not going to, dump the love of your life because they're not perfect, how can you reset those expectations? How can you have a new bar, a new level? And for me, what that means is accepting what is, just as it is, not trying to make it different when I can't, and just loving how it is. There's a real richness there. And when I'm super present, I'm able to feel that richness. And then I can also set some expectations, but it's not for other people to fulfill, it's for me to be able to do. So when we give ourselves agency to make change, as opposed to waiting for somebody else to make the change, we will inevitably be happier because we are moving forward. So, in a place that could be, what organization can I get involved in? What project could I do? What one small thing might make a difference? I saw recently there was a flyer stapled to the pole that said that there's a new running club starting. And I thought, go you, just wanting a thing and doing a thing. So, what is the one thing you could want and do in your own community? As a community organizer, I will give you a secret. You can pretty much do anything that you want. Yes, sometimes you'll have to get permission for things, but oftentimes you don't. You can just staple a flyer and people will gather to do that thing, or you can join something. There's less barriers to change than you think. And I encourage you to do a thing. See if that makes it better in the community that you live. If, on the other hand, you're already doing a lot, maybe do less. Maybe what is making you unhappy is that you have overcommitted and progress is incredibly slow and you are frustrated by the process. Do less. You don't have to do all the things. So either do a thing or do less of a thing. It'll help. It'll help with resentment. And as far as work, work is not all the things. Get out of work what you want. Find a mentor, take on opportunities. Use it to catapult your career to something else. Try to see your work as an avenue for your own growth as opposed to it fulfilling everything for you. I think that if I had known that early in my career, I think I would have been a lot happier at some of the positions that I had. And then as far as relationships, it's the same thing. First, enjoy them how they are, and then reset the expectation. No relationship will fulfill all your needs. So if that person can't be your coach or your motivator or your mentor or whatever it is that you're looking for, you'll need to find that either within yourself or with someone else. I think those are really concrete ways to deal with resentment. I will say resentment will eat you alive. And it's also just a hole you're digging for yourself, and you're never going to get out of that hole without some help, without a push. And it isn't to say that good things will just magically happen to you when you let go of resentment. That's not how it works. It's just in the recalibrating of your expectations, you will be able to find a little more happiness. And to release the expectation that any one thing will be fulfilling will help. You don't want to be a bitter old lady or a bitter man. That's a sad, sad existence. And nobody really wants those people around, not in their community, not at work, not in their relationships. And so finding a way out of that is an important step to having a longer, happier life, honestly. And so, although feeling resentment's normal, I think it's also important to get out of it, to figure your way out of it. Don't stay in it. That's the danger, is staying in it. So what about you? I want to hear about a time you've been resentful. Do you feel that about the place you live? Were you really idealistic, or the job you took, or the relationship that you're in? And what has been your experience to get out of feeling resentful? I think there's a lot of learning that can happen. I think people don't actually talk about being resentful very often, and I hear it a lot. I live in a community that people really want to live in. It is a beautiful place. They vacation here and then they think they want to live here. And when they live here, it doesn't match the experience of what it was like when they were on vacation, because it's real life then, right? And so they have to recalibrate. Some of them can't, and they end up leaving. Which is sad because they're great people, and I'm sad that their expectation didn't match what was really happening in front of them. And so I'd like to know how you feel about that. How do you feel about it in the places you live, and your work, and in your relationships? And I think the more we talk about it, the more we can normalize the feeling and also help each other get out of it. So yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it in the comments.